Okay, so let's start. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to everyone who's in the US as well. My name is Dina, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar, which is our 15th webinar on how to say no and the wisdom of saying it, as it could be as crucial as the passion to say yes. Can you see my slide? Okay. So I hope you are as excited as I am for today's webinar, which is presented by Dr. Talia Swartz, who actually has a recent publication on embracing the power of no in decision making, which made us reach out to her because there's no one who could be more of a perfect fit for this webinar than her. And her accepting our request is actually a pleasure for us for today's webinar. So let me give you a brief introduction about Dr. Talia. She's an associate professor of medicine and infectious diseases at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in New York. So today, if you have any questions regarding this webinar, you can just write it in the question chat, and the person in the question is going to ask it later to Dr. Schwartz. But before Dr. Talia takes in, let me just give you a nice reminder of our next events and tell you to not miss out. So we have this summer the second UPA Job Fair and Student Exchange event on the 18th of June. So don't miss out the date, save it. Then we have the 20th anniversary of Briggs and Proteomics Summer School, which is going to take place from the 28th of July until the 3rd of August. And the deadline is April, so also keep that in mind if you're planning to learn and also enjoy the summer. I think it's a great opportunity. And finally, we have the HUPO conference this year happening in Dresden, Germany from the 20th till the 24th of October. And the deadline is May. So keep those dates in your calendar. And if you would like to join us on our webinars, we actually, every season, we plan on a webinar. So keep an eye on our website to know, to stay tuned and to know what we are up for. So right now, I would leave you with the webinar with Dr. Talia, and the floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dina. And it is a pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to share my screen, which I think is working. Is that right? Can you see?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Wonderful. Okay. So thanks, everyone. I'm excited to talk to you today about saying no, and having this quote here, having the wisdom to say no can be as crucial as the passion to say yes. So we're going to delve into that. And just to tell you that I do not have any conflicts of interest to disclose, and to disclose to you that I'm not an expert in saying no. In fact, I struggle with this all the time. The fact that we wrote this scholarly work on thinking about the literature and approaches to saying no is a testament to the fact that it's really hard. And so I'm hoping that we can have a dialogue today about some approaches for you in your own decision-making, in taking in your own values and priorities and thinking about what things you can say no to and then how. So our learning objectives for today are to raise awareness of the need to say no, so that you can protect your wellness, productivity, career, all of it, to provide you with a framework for assessing how and when to say no, and then identify approaches to saying no effectively. And then finally, the bonus that I'm hoping, but not necessarily, but maybe, is to increase your comfort in saying no. And so we're going to do some polling, online polling. And so get your devices out. You can either do this using a website on your computer, or you can do it using a smart device, and I will give you instructions. So let's start off. If you either scan this QR code with your phone, or if you go to slido.com, #say-no. The first question I want to ask you is, how comfortable do you feel saying no to a professional invitation? 1 being extremely uncomfortable and 5 being extremely comfortable. So let's see. So far, a couple of people do not feel very comfortable. So there's a lot of range. So we'll give everybody a moment. Thank you for voting. I'm glad that the poll is working. Great. So excellent distribution, some people feeling more comfortable than others, but overall the group feeling like towards the left of center, not too comfortable. More than half of us, and I would put myself in there, I don't feel very comfortable. So let's say moderately uncomfortable saying no. And that's not unusual. It's hard to say no. So now you get to contribute a little bit more. How do you feel when you're thinking of saying no? What thoughts go through your mind? How does it make you feel? Worried, guilty, anxiety? Am I disappointing people? Hesitant? Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot in that. We don't want people to feel disappointed in us. We don't want to feel like we're missing an opportunity, uncomfortable. We don't want to disappoint people. A lot of guilt. Meeting expectations, right? So people sort of hold these images of us and we're afraid that we're going to somehow compromise those things, not meeting somebody else's needs. So not only are we not doing what is expected of us, but we're not meeting the requests or the expectations of others. So we'll give people a little more time. People need my help contribution. So I'm not being a good colleague or friend. Yeah, a lot of it. I struggle with this too. So I see you and I feel it. Looking not interested, right? Like the last thing, we're enthusiastic people. We didn't get here because we are passionate about the work that we do. So how could we then want to send a message that we don't seem interested? And finally, we'll give one participant. Okay. All right, wonderful. Well, please continue to share and happy to have a discussion later. So my hope for today is to give you the overview as we're going to talk about why it is important to say no. We're going to talk about why it's hard to say no, and many of you already touched on it. We're going to talk about whether or not you can say no, how to say no effectively. And then we're going to have 3 real life scenarios where we'll look at them and reflect on what may go into the decision making. And then finally, we will conclude. So the importance of saying no. And I think it is really important that before we talk about saying no, we have to talk about saying yes. And so the idea of why are we saying no, it's all for the idea of saying yes. And so this book, if you have never heard of it or read it, is amazing. It is the idea that the improvisation world, so if any of you are familiar with improv comedy, the fundamental principle is yes and, that saying yes to any ludicrous opportunity or invitation is a way to open up creativity and collaboration. And so if you've ever seen people on stage in improv, they never say no to a ridiculous suggestion. It's called an offer. They always say yes and they go with it. Whatever you're being offered, look, you go with it. And that concept opens up opportunities for all of us to professional development, to making friends, things that we can explore that might have been shut doors for us before. And so as we think about our own individual values and opportunities, it is really important that we have room to say yes. And that by contrast, if we are getting too many of these invitations or requests, there's just not enough hours in the day. And so how do we then prioritize what we say yes to and then what we therefore aren't able to say yes to? So to start off as talking about our values, I wanted to thank the people that have been so important in helping me make these hard decisions. And I put them into 3 major categories. My mentors, the people who have lifted me up and gotten to me where I am to this day. And that includes people as early as high school and my undergraduate training, people who have been lifelong mentors through my career advising, scientific mentors, and then colleagues. And I put all these people together to think of how they've helped me lead to my own scientific and professional development. And I rely on them to this day for asking these hard questions. Is this something that I should say yes, no, or no to? The second bucket is people in my lab who are doing the science that helps propel the work that we're doing, and they are amazing. And every time we think about, like, is this an opportunity, have to think about how it will impact overall the science that we're doing. And then the last is my family. These are my 2 kids, my husband. How is a new invitation or opportunity going to impact this group? And why I need to say no to things so that I can be with them and prioritize that above other things in certain times and then other things at other times. And so in my mind, I'm always balancing these sort of three buckets: the professional, the science, and the personal. And you may have different buckets exactly for how you're prioritizing things, but it is important that you're thinking about how are you making decisions on the basis of the things that are important to you? And are you aligning priorities with what makes sense? Maybe that will change over the course of your career. And as Dina mentioned, a lot of this comes from this paper that we published at the end of last year about striving for equity in academia and embracing the power of no in decision making. So please feel free to refer to this for more details. Okay, so the importance of saying no. So it's really important as you're deciding whether or not to say no that you're establishing your core values. What are the things that are most important to you? How do they align with the people in your life, with the decisions that you make? It is critical that in order to maintain high quality work, you're able to protect that time. And so if you are working on a high priority publication or a grant or a project and you're churning out experiments, then that has to take priority if that's sort of how you're viewing your career at the moment. And then saying yes to other things, even if it feels like you're being nice or doing the right thing, may compromise the quality of the work that you're doing. And then preserving your personal and professional integrity. So if you're saying yes to just everything under the sun and your schedule is so jam-packed, then it's really hard for you to do high quality work at the end of the day. And so in some of the sentiments that were shared from you earlier about like saying no and it's expected of me and I feel bad, that's true. But ultimately, if you have a responsibility to another high priority project, and you're not able to do it well, then that will be worse than saying yes to something that's maybe not as important. So being able to balance all of that. So now, why is it hard to say no? You all know this, and you communicated a lot of it. So fear of missing out is really big. What if I say no to the next big thing that will change the future of my career, my life? There's this pressure to please. We feel like we want to make people happy. It feels bad. It feels like we're disappointing people. It feels like we, maybe shirking our responsibilities or making people feel that we're either not interested or not engaged or not good citizens or not good friends or loved ones. There are perceived negative consequences. So what's going to happen if I don't do this? Maybe I will irritate my colleague. Maybe I will be viewed as an awful person. Maybe I will, close doors to something that may open up opportunities for me that will be important in the future. Then there are cultural or social norms, this expectation that you're just supposed to do this, or that if you come from a certain group, it's an expectation that you're going to contribute to this work because everyone sort of assumes or thinks that that is the case. And then lack of prioritization and time management. So maybe you haven't gone through the exercise of thinking about what's really important yet. And so it's not clear like what is important and what's not. And so, if somebody that you like asks you to do something, or if somebody important asks you to do something, and maybe you haven't figured out exactly how much time it's going to take or what it will actually mean of you, it may be hard for you to figure out where this opportunity lies in the grand scheme of things. Now, there are even more complexities of saying no. So for intersectional considerations, that is individuals from either certain groups that are underrepresented in science or having intersectional identities, it is even harder both to say no, and there tend to be more invitations. So if you are the only one representing a certain group of people, there suddenly appears many more opportunities for you to have to represent that group of people. And so it means that now you're getting asked to do things more, you're asked to be on more committees, you're asked to, take on responsibilities because someone feels that there needs to be representation from the group that you may be representing or are thought to represent. Maybe you agree or not. But then there's also the added challenges of what saying no means. So stereotype threat, that is that if you feel that you are representing a group and if you don't represent that group well, there's going to be even more pressure that you are sending a bad message on behalf of everyone from this same identity, which is unfair to sort of have to assume that responsibility. But then also the idea of imposter fear. So maybe I feel like I don't belong here. There are other people who don't look like me, and maybe I'm only being asked this because there's a sense that there needs to be certain representation, or that I'm being invited to this, but not because I'm actually good at this or belong there. And so then weighing this idea of the invitation and what it actually means with how to prioritize it and how other people will view your response. Then there are power dynamics and bias. So who's asking the question, and how comfortable or even possible is it for you to say no? Is there an imbalance in hierarchy that is sort of assuming that whatever this person of a certain status says needs to dictate what you're doing? And then what does that mean in terms of things like stereotype threat and imposter fears, and how an individual might feel saying yes or no? And then this idea of cultural expectations and community pressure. So this feeling that I'm supposed to do this because there's an expectation on behalf of me representing a group, or that it would be problematic if I didn't, because if I don't do it, maybe nobody else will. And so then it feels that there's this pressure, not just for you to serve this role, but also on behalf of a larger community. And so that makes all of this all the more both harder, but also more frequent that this will occur. So now, whether you can say no is really important. So the first very important question is, can you say no? Are you in a position where it's even a possibility? And so that gets to a lot of the question of who is asking, what is the request, and is it aligned with your primary goals and responsibilities? And so if this is something that your direct supervisor is telling you to do, not asking, but telling you to do, then it's harder to say no to that, unless there's, specific urgency or type of situation that really like poses a conflict. But maybe it's a situation where there's not a lot of leeway, and so that this becomes a little bit moot. But if it's something that you can say no to, that maybe it's not from someone who's directing you specifically because it's part of your job description, but more that it's a professional invitation, it's an invitation to talk, to be on a committee, to collaborate, to do something that is something that you have some agency of saying no to, then you can ask yourself these questions. So is it aligned with my goals? Is this important and something that I think is aligned with the things that I think are important to me? Time and resource assessment is critical. So how long is this going to take for me to do? And what is it going to require of me? Am I going to need to take all of the people that are working on a certain project and have them now working on this thing for a sustained period of time? Or is this something that will take minimal time away from my other responsibilities, and maybe is something that I've already done before? So maybe I already gave a talk on this subject and it's aligned with my goals because it's completely related to the science that I'm doing. And so it wouldn't take me that much time, but it would be, something beneficial to me for my career development or for scientific dissemination. How does this impact on prior commitments? So what have I already said yes to, and what's going to have to be compromised as a result of saying yes to this? So this is important because we already have stuff on our plate. And so every time you say yes to a new thing, it means that you're going to have to push something else to the back burner potentially. And so assessing the context of your alignment and goals with the time and resource assessment will help you decide, how does this impact your prior commitments? And then, what does this mean for your personal boundaries and well-being? Does saying yes to this mean that now you're going to have to work late and not be able to be with your loved ones? Does it mean you're going to have to work weekends where you might otherwise not have had to? Does it mean you're going to need to push other things out of the way and maybe not impact your professional responsibilities, but might impact your personal responsibilities? And then what's the opportunity cost? So what happens if you say no? What's going to happen? Will no one notice? Will the whole world notice? Does it matter whether people notice or not? What does it mean for you, your career, your professional development? What do you stand to lose? And this gets a little to what we said about fear of missing out, this idea like, oh no, I'm afraid I might say no to an opportunity, but actually doing a bit of a data-driven approach and saying, maybe this is how I feel, but what does this actually mean for me in terms of saying no to this opportunity? What would I actually be losing if I said no? So I am hugely grateful to Lakshmi Devi, who is one of my mentors and who taught me this scheme years and years ago that I use all the time. And so she talks about using this scheme that we talk about in the paper called fame, fortune, and fun. So you can decide if a specific opportunity aligns with your goals based on these three buckets: fame, fortune, and fun. So what does that actually mean? It sounds sort of silly, but it's not. So fame means professional reputation. If it's scientific, if it's professional development, does this allow you a platform to better disseminate your work and allow you professional development? That is one category, and it's not an all or nothing, but it's a sort of a scale. Is this something that will help you in fame in whatever area you're seeking to establish a reputation? Fortune means, will it bring you support and resources? So I don't think any of us went into science really to get rich. So it's not about like making a pile of money, but it's more, will this allow you protected time to do the work that you want to do or need to do? Will it allow you salary support that is, either added to your salary or just a portion of it that will allow you to do the work that you want to do? And or will it allow you resources to do that? So maybe it's providing another person or personnel that can help you on projects. Maybe it's providing some kind of access to something that will help you in whatever your goals are. And then finally, fun. So is it something that you love? Is this aligned with your personal mission? Does this bring you joy? This can be something like mentoring or something that is personally important to you. It can be something that you just enjoy doing and may actually not be either of the other two. It may not bring you fame or fortune, but it's just something that's fun. If an opportunity comes your way that has zero of all three of these, it becomes much easier to say no. No, if it's not going to give you any kind of reputation, it's not going to offer you any kind of salary support or resources, and you don't enjoy it, it's not aligned with anything that you're interested in, then it's an easy no. And this has helped me so much because there have been a bunch of opportunities that have come my way that really didn't satisfy any of these. And so that helped. The challenge is it's not always zero in all of these buckets. It tends to be a little bit in some of them or all of them. If it's a lot, if the bucket is filled up in all three of them, then that's an easy yes. And then the question is sort of everything in between. And so that's what we're going to address here with some of these real life cases. And we're going to do some interactive polling for you to reflect on how you might approach each of these three cases. So after we're going to first talk about how to say no effectively, and then we'll address the cases. So how to say no effectively. So now you have decided. It's very easy. It satisfied nothing in any of those buckets. Now, how do you say no? So these are very important because if you've decided to say no, you need to go full force and say no, because if you equivocate, you might end up getting stuck and roped into the thing that you didn't want to do in the first place. So you want to be clear and direct. You want to be polite, but you want to say, thank you so much for the invitation. Unfortunately, I am not able to do it, period. You don't want to say stuff like, I would love to, but here's the thing, and blah, blah, blah. And then it wasn't really clear from your message whether you were actually saying no or not. So you want to be very clear and direct and polite. Offer alternatives or solutions. So I can't do it, but this other person is amazing and you should consider them. Or what if you were to do this, this, and this? It's not my problem, but I'm helping you solve your problem. Express gratitude and be gracious. You always want to be gracious no matter what. And it's really important. You never know when you may interact with this person again and may, say yes in the future, which is the last point. That is not now. So not now is really, really, really important, because if this is something that you might want to do, but you just can't do it at this moment because you have a lot of commitments, you can always use not now. And having experienced this personally, where I was afraid to say no because I was, for all the reasons that we listed, I was afraid of disappointing. It felt like an important opportunity. I didn't want to say no, but I just couldn't balance that with all the other commitments. And I said not now, and they invited me again. So it does happen. And so you don't want to close the doors. You can say not now, and you can give a reason why, but that is really important. And then the I statements. So use I statements and explain the constraints. So I would love to do this, but I can't because blah, blah, blah. And that also opens up the time dependence so that you could say, I'm not able to do it now, but please consider me in the future if that's something that they're interested in. Okay, so now we're going to go to the real life scenarios. So we're going to do 3 scenarios, and after each of them, I'll ask for your reflections. So case 1. As a graduate student, you have recently made a significant breakthrough by publishing a major paper in a high-impact journal. This publication has garnered attention, and soon after, you receive an invitation to present your findings at an international conference in Prague. The conference is highly relevant to your area of study featuring renowned experts in proteomics, and is an event that you have consistently attended. Of note, your sister resides in Prague. So I'm just going to remind you to think about the fame, fortune, and fun buckets. And so now we're going to ask everybody, how would you approach this invitation? So feel free to use the same QR code. So remember, this is a scientific conference in your area. You have published on it. You're being asked to present on this work. This is a meeting that you've gone to before, so you're likely to go again anyway. And your sister lives in the city where the conference is happening. Yes, please. I would surely go. Fame, yes. Say yes, accept. Definitely, of course. So yeah, so it's pretty, I assume that we all sort of agree that this is an easy yes, fame, fortune, yes, and fun, fortune, fun and fortune, yes. Fame too, right, for the reputation of being able to talk, yes. Extended over the weekend, exactly, right. So this is easy because this one satisfies all the buckets. And it like, deliberately has all of that because maybe it's like in a city that you don't want to visit for some reason, but you maybe the fame part. But all of this was an easy one, so we like to start easy, and so good that there's consensus. Excellent. Okay, so case 2. As an assistant professor, you have recently assumed leadership as head of your university's proteomics graduate core curriculum, a role of considerable complexity involving the oversight of course development, faculty coordination, and maintaining the academic integrity and efficacy of the program. Concurrently, the Parent-Teacher Association of your 6-year-old child's educational institution has extended an invitation for you to spearhead the annual fundraising bake sale. Your child recently lamented that you are not home a lot, and the other parents frequently volunteer at school. So, again, reminding you of the fame, fortune, and fun. And so, for case 2, how might you approach this invitation? So now you've taken on a pretty major administrative responsibility in addition to the science that you do. You are feeling guilty that you may not be home enough, or at least your child is conveying that you should be feeling guilty about not being home enough, and you're being asked to take on a leadership role in the bake sale at the child's school. Okay, so it sounds fun. My child would be happy. I think would accept. Yes, but ask for help. Partner with one of the other parents. No leadership, but will participate as an ordinary member. It's something after hours, so check your personal availability and say yes. Yeah, so delegate tasks at work to be able to do the bake sale. Yes, it might result in more quality time with the kid. Need to communicate with my partner, see if they can take part in the house and be more involved at home, difficult and needs thinking. Say no, but offer alternative to quality time with child. Yeah, great. So we have some mixed thoughts on this one. And I have to be honest, I'm not a baker, and I would not, my own personal bias was that this for me, and like we all have our own talents and things, I would not be able to take on the leadership of this thing. I would definitely feel guilty and torn. But for me, I would be involved, but not take on the leadership thing. So you are, as some of you said, like you are allowed to pivot and sort of say like that the invitation is not all or nothing. But very importantly, to sort of consider the different options. And yes, you don't have to say yes, but maybe, so this thing, say no, but offer alternative to quality time with child. Yeah. At no time in this case did we learn that your child is particularly invested in this bake sale. So maybe it's the case that you're involved, but because you're feeling guilty, but maybe your kid actually doesn't even notice or have anything to do with it. So it's ambiguous on purpose because you need more information to find out if this is really something that you want to do. Maybe you're an amazing baker and this is something that you would love to do, like even if you didn't feel guilty. And so then and maybe you have great leadership skills in bakery and pastry organization. And so it all depends on like your own values and where you think you want to spend your time. But what I love from some of these comments are the idea of like checking your personal availability, coordinating with your partner, tweaking things, maybe delegating some tasks at work versus delegating tasks at the bake sale, or coming up with a compromise. And so, nothing in life is like all or nothing. And there's certainly ways to finesse this, but this is one of those things that if we think about the buckets, if we go back to the buckets, in terms of fame, fortune, and fun, it's definitely not going to bring you fame. It's not, I don't think it's going to bring you fortune. Really, the question that you have to ask yourself is, will it bring you fun? And that means, will it bring you quality time with your child? Will it bring you quality time of where you think a priority of like contributing to the school is because you feel a sense of purpose and mission alignment with the institution? This is where you need to ask the question about that fun piece. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. So the third case, and this is the final case, you are a mid-career associate professor with a strong track record in immunology. Recently, you received an invitation to join your institution's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, or DEI committee. This opportunity requires a commitment that might detract from your research and clinical duties. As a scientist who has intersecting identities that are underrepresented in science, you recognize the critical need for representation and believe in the impact you could make on the committee, but you're torn between contributing to the DEI initiatives and maintaining your existing professional responsibilities. So again, fame, fortune, fun. What do we think about this one? So competing responsibilities in science and professional related to contributions to DEI efforts, feeling a personal sense of mission, and needing to weigh the risks and benefits of the time commitment and the contributions. So fame, okay. A lot of participants are typing, maybe long answers, so we are excited to see what everybody has to say. Maybe this one is harder. Hard one. Probably yes, fame, recognition for your work. Does not seem fun. So even though I feel like it would be a great contribution to the committee, I would kindly decline. Fame and fortune depends on the environment around the professorship. So I do think that the fun, like when we think about fun doesn't have to only mean fun. Like, does it, bring me laughter? But fun also can be like alignment with personal mission. And so that, if that helps to think about like the fun category, it doesn't necessarily have to be fun. It won't be fun, but depending on the amount of other non-career responsibilities, it might show commitment to your institution and help out other people. Fortunate, it needs some consideration, but it's difficult. So now this is really important, and it's raising the idea of fortune and whether this will be prioritized from a fortune perspective. So is the institution committed to this? And will there be financial support for this? So is this something that could count towards salary support? Like, is this a part of your job that you could get paid to do? The work could be rewarding, or networking, I would try to do it. And again, this is really like an individualized decision, and we don't have enough information. We would need to know, like, what is the time commitment and what is the potential benefits? Maybe there are a bunch of awesome people on that committee and you feel like you could do great work, as opposed to maybe it's a committee that has historically not been particularly impactful. That is that the committee is formed, but the institution may not be committed to taking the guidance of the committee or doing anything with it. And so there are a lot of questions you want to ask yourself about what are the potential gains from this. And then again, like weighing it with the other existing commitments. Wonderful. Well, thanks to everybody for your comments on this. And so now we're going to ask a question after we've reflected on this: is how comfortable do you feel saying no to a professional invitation? So we're going to do the same question that we did about a half hour ago and see where people are feeling. Okay. All right. So please continue to vote, but it is encouraging that we've sort of shifted the curve a little bit to the right. So a lot more, half of us feel not uncomfortable saying no. So now some of us feel pretty comfortable, and some of us feel extremely comfortable. But I think overall, not feeling uncomfortable saying no is great. And it's always going to be uncomfortable a little bit, but if we're able to shift our comfort, it will help us ultimately make better decisions that are more in line with our priorities and values. Amazing. So we're going to conclude and have time for questions. So I love this Steve Jobs quote: "It's only by saying no that you can concentrate on the things that are really important." And so that's what we're trying to do here. And so I would encourage you, as you think about the fear of missing out, to actually turning that to the joy of missing out, because it's okay that we're going to miss some things, but the goal is to be happy with those things that we miss so that we can focus on the things that we really think that we need to do. And so in conclusion, we want to say no so that we can say yes. Saying no is hard. We all acknowledge that. We want to examine our values in alignment with our own personal missions. And then once we do that, to say it effectively and confidently, so that we can be confident in our decision, know that this was the right thing to do, and then not look back. And so I'm going to open it up to questions, and I will stop sharing. And thank you so much for your feedback, contributions, and looking forward to having a discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for this amazing, interactive, and very insightful presentation. So first of all, thank you. I can see also a lot of clapping hands being thrown away, so that's perfect. So yeah, I would like to, so I already collected quite some questions, and I of course also had some of my own. Actually, mine relates to this last one where you said, okay, we have this FOMO, of course, that we're most of us familiar with, to turn it around in this, yeah, like appreciating no to appreciate then the time that you gained from it. But how do you handle this, that you have now said no, and then this feeling comes? Yeah, how do you then still tell yourself in some way, hey, it was okay that I made this decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how do you say no?
But then, yeah,
Or how do you feel okay with it? It is hard, as it's hard to decide to say no. If you do it in this sort of like evidence-based approach, like using data, really analyzing it, thinking about like how it aligns with your values and thinking about the buckets, then you made the decision based on this analysis. And so it should make it easier for you to decide whether or not to say no. And so, yes, you potentially could feel certain things, but ultimately, if you made the decision to say no based on that analysis, then you should use the data to inform how you feel about it. So I know that this was the right thing to do. And even though maybe there are some benefits, I know this is the right thing to do. Maybe different opportunities will present themselves later. For right now, this was the right decision.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. This indeed with the buckets is, I think it's very good, as I think I speak for most scientists as well, to have this like more of a, yeah, golden rule or some way to like handle then the question and to like weigh it out with the help of these buckets. So that's very great tool that you introduced in this presentation. So thank you for that. So we have another question. That, as you mentioned in the start, that regarding also more the hierarchy, that it might be that a PI of you asks to do a certain experiment, a certain job or something like that, but your workload is, for example, too much. How can you then best say no with this hierarchy in mind, of course?
Yeah. So how do you say no to somebody in a position of authority? So again, maybe you can't say no. Let's say your PI asks you for an experiment that is critical to a paper or grant, or the reviewers ask for it. Like you can't always say no. Maybe you have to do it. And maybe the question is more like, how do I do it? Or I have so much else on my plate. Then that becomes more of a dialogue about, instead of saying no, it's then, if we have to do this, then I have other things that are going on, and I need your help in prioritizing because I can't do everything. And so maybe then it becomes clear that you actually have to say no, maybe not to this thing that you're being asked to do, but to something else. And so that's okay. You should feel empowered to ask if you're feeling overwhelmed and you can't prioritize. You've been asked to do something and you feel that you can't do it. If you can't say no to it, then how do you say yes to it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Thanks. So then we have another question. How do you handle so you have now said no, how do you handle the rejection, kind of in that way that you notice that the person that you just said no to handles it with some resistance or disappointment? So yeah, of course, you went into your strength by saying no, it didn't fulfill your 3 buckets, but you notice now this disappointment. How do you handle this, or how would you handle this?
So you notice disappointment on the part of the requester
Yes.
maybe after. So maybe you didn't say no as effectively as you could have. So maybe, when we talked about those approaches, like being decisive and confident and also offering alternative solutions, maybe you could lean more into that. And so if you're feeling particularly remorseful or whatever, then you could offer also, maybe this is an idea you could consider, or blah blah blah. But just because the person is disappointed or whatever doesn't mean that you should go back and then change your analysis and say yes. So like the disappointment of the requester shouldn't be a reason for you to question all you if you did the whole thing, you looked at your values and priorities and everything, then that, unless that person's personal opinion of you was up there in your priorities, then that shouldn't really impact what you do moving forward. So of course you have to be kind and gracious, but ultimately you can only do the best you can, and be collaborative and be kind and helpful. But if you had to say no, you had to say no. I had an invitation from a person that I like very much recently, asking me to travel and participate in something during a time that is very busy for me. Like I'm already traveling, I'm doing all those things. And so then I said no, I'm sorry, I can't say no. And then I got a follow-up question. Well, what if we shifted the time to right after you're traveling? Like right after that. And so technically, like I am available on the calendar, but I know that I'm just going to be back from like a series of trips and have another bunch of family commitments, and it's like happening at the beginning of the school year where my kids are in school. And so I just know that that's not going to work. And so I started to think, well, I mean, I guess I could do it. And then I realized, no, I can't. And so I, unfortunately had to say, I apologies, like this is a really busy time, and the time right after that also busy. But I would, I'd be happy to help in other ways besides actually flying out to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So I actually have a bit of a follow-up question that is actually a bit of the other way around. So what if you now have said yes to a certain situation, and afterwards you tried to check out your 3 buckets, figured out that this was maybe not the thing to do? How would you then still afterwards still be able to say no? And how, like, what would be the best way to do so?
Okay, so we already said yes, and now we're realizing maybe we shouldn't have said yes. So how do you say no after you've already said yes?
Exactly.
So maybe you can and maybe you can't. So this gets to all of the sort of the fundamental questions that we asked about, like personal and professional integrity, and how will you be viewed saying no now. This is different. It's different saying no now in the middle when you've already committed to something. And so that is a little bit of a harder situation, is saying no, because now people are depending on you. You signed up for the job, and so you really do have to do the job that you signed up to do. But that doesn't mean that things like life happens, things happen, things change. And so I don't think that there's like a straightforward, easy answer to this question. I think it very much depends on like whether there are other people that can help you out, either delegating this responsibility, kind of building your team, and other people that might be able to fill in. Maybe it's that there's going to be opportunity to rotate off, and so you can name other people who can take over. Maybe it's that you need to renegotiate the terms of what you were doing, and so perhaps this committee meets too frequently, or the job responsibilities are beyond what you were originally understanding. It's a delicate balance, but I would say probably it's much harder to extract yourself from a situation that you already agreed to than saying no at the outset, which is yet another reason why it's important to say no early, because it's harder to say yes later. Yeah. But I think overall, this is an issue of professionalism where you don't want to shirk responsibilities to something that you say yes to, which is again another reason that it's very important that you be careful what you say yes to, because you don't want to say yes to things and then do a mediocre job. So that doesn't mean that you're stuck. It doesn't mean that you can't say no to things later, and it doesn't mean that you can't like tweak as you go. But once you've said yes, you find yourself in a bit of a bind where it's harder to get out of.
Yeah, I agree and completely understand. And yeah, that's a good point. So I saw that some people also shared in general with all of us how they or learned some tricks or methods that help them, or saw from other people that inspired them how to say no. Do you have, next to the 3 buckets that you explained today, any other inspirational from one of the mentors, for example, as you showed, that made you realize, hey, if she can do it or he can do it, I can do it as well, to say no? Or do you have maybe a personal experience that you could share with us regarding this?
Yeah, sure. Lots of them. I guess I'm thinking what I think one of the things that I've learned is that over the course of your career, your values shift, your priorities shift. And I think in the beginning, you're much more likely to say yes to things because you are much less differentiated. And so you can sort of see multiple different avenues for your career to go in. And so I think I probably said yes to many more things. Or let me not say many more things, but a larger percentage of things 10 years ago, let's say, than now, because like you never know. Like, so I don't think maybe I ever said no 10 years ago, because why would I say no to things when I'm just sort of starting out and learning? And plus I didn't have as many invitations. So it may, in some sense, maybe it was easier because there was a smaller denominator of things that possibly could get a no. But I think that like as you go on and you sort of hone your core values and your core professional priorities, it becomes harder to say no because there are maybe more invitations and things, but it also becomes maybe easier to say no because it's more clear to you like what are your real priorities. Your time is more limited, and you've also like seen the downside of what saying no or what saying yes can do. So to the further question, the previous question, I've said yes to things that I shouldn't have said yes to for sure. And so having learned that lesson, I'm unlikely to do that again because I realized like that was a giant time commitment that really wasn't helping anyone. Actually, wasn't helping me or anybody else. So I think mentors have definitely taught me that, and I've sort of relied on mentors in many cases who advised me to say yes to things that I might not have otherwise said yes to because they had the foresight to say, no, this is a good thing. You should do this. And it will open up opportunities for you. So I've been lucky to like have been invited to participate in talks or panels or co-author things that have led to future things. And so that's why you really want people in your corner, recommending you for things and inviting you to do things so that you can open up new avenues and in the beginning, not say no to so much.
Yeah, thanks. So then I'm thanking everyone actually for all their questions that they've sent in, but of course we had to limit us to certain questions. I think I went through almost all of them, and I would like to finally end then with this last question that I still got, which was a very interesting one, mentioning that we are probably here different, from all over Europe and maybe also even from the States, of course, and we can think of the fact that there are often also cultural differences in people, how to say no, or what they find culturally appropriated also to say no, and what these differences are. And do you have any experience with these, or how, are you, should we be aware of them, or how to be aware of them, or do you have any, input into that?
Yeah, I think that is an amazing question. And that's probably something that like no one of us can answer. I think that is more sort of like a collective question about like how we each view our own experiences in like the cultural approach to saying no. And so that speaks to the idea of getting input. If you're sort of not sure, and maybe maybe like a cross-cultural invitation or something that you don't know exactly how to approach, that maybe getting input from others who may have different experiences and perspectives may be helpful. I think I could be wrong, but I think that the graciousness piece is probably transcendent. I think it's always nice to be nice and to express gratitude, whether you're saying yes or no. And I think at the end of the day, you have to protect your own values and your own priorities. So really the difference is how you say it, but not so much whether or not you say it. And so I think probably the principles of everything about like how to make the decision whether or not to say no is and I would be curious, like from the group, if that, if there are things that maybe we need to course correct. And of course we all have blind spots. So that is something that needs to be workshopped a little bit. But I think maybe just in terms of like how you word things and how you actually decline, maybe the piece that varies.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great. Yeah, I definitely can see myself in that as well. With, of course, the decision to make the no still stays the same, I would say, but indeed, how would you then approach the person? And I think the only thing we can do is to practice this, I would say. So the more we would use these three buckets, or the more we would also see the responses from other people to bring us also further into this aspect. So that already brings us to the end of the webinar. First of all, I would like to last of all, I would still thank you very much for this presentation. And it was very fun to be part of it. And thanks for being here with us. And looking forward to further works of yours. And thanks.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And thanks to everybody for your interactiveness and contributions to the discussion.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Also, the questions were great. So thank you all for sharing. And also the polls were really grateful. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great
Okay. Yeah, you too.